Hello, I'm EnterElysium, and this is just a quick video to cover the changes in the 1.7 patch for Europa Universalis 4, and to discuss the mini expansion that comes along with it, which is Res Publica. Also, I want to mention briefly something kind of weird and crazy that's been going on. One of the small changes that they did in the patch, which is a change to the way that truce timers work. Truce timers are now 5 to 15 years depending on the war score, so if you take them to 100% war score and then peace, it'll be 15 years, and if you take them, if you peace out like a white peace with 0 war score, it'll be a 5-year truce. So, loads of people have been complaining about this, absolutely complaining about it, it's like crazy. And honestly, my opinion on this change is, it does make it a little bit boring. Currently, if you're playing as, say, Brandenburg over here, then you do have a few people to war against, so that getting a truce time with one person at 15 years isn't terrible. However, it does make for a little bit boring parts, because, peace isn't that interesting. There isn't currently much going on when you're at peace. And of course, normally people will be allied with others, so you'll actually maybe only get 2 decent sort of blocks that you can go to war with. And having to wait 15 years in between wars is a lot. Admittedly, if you're going, that much over here, you probably have taken some. But if you want to, say, be England going to war with France, or France going to war with England, or France going to war with Castile, or vice versa, you are going to have issues with, the amount of war score you take them for, and then having a 15-year truce timer. Now, people have complained about this massively. People have actually been fairly irate about it, to the point of just craziness. I mean, I know the internet loves hyperbole, and this is one of the elements of, oh, it's going to break the entire game. It won't. It's not that bad. But the one thing that has come out of it is that I think the lead designer for the game said that it's not balanced for single player, it's balanced for multiplayer. Now, I guess it makes more sense in multiplayer when a person will, maximum try to disrupt your country, so you've got 15 years to try and get back and at least a little bit on your feet, because otherwise it could be a bit snowbally, 5-year war, 5-year war, 5-year war. However, the vast majority of people don't play multiplayer. I mean, it's only a fraction of people actually play multiplayer, and there are a couple of issues that come with this. Firstly, I mean, if we consider the fact that up until maybe a couple of versions ago, Europa Universalis 4 was actually fairly unstable in multiplayer. It would, often not be able to find a game or kick you out. That means if multiplayer was their core game element, then their core element was broken in the first few games, or at least, incredibly buggy, which is kind of weird and also doesn't speak, loads to them. I mean, I love Paradox, absolutely. They're a brilliant company for a lot of reasons, but that just seems a bit odd. And secondly, the vast majority of people are never going to play multiplayer in a strategy game. Generally, strategy games are, there is a multiplayer element, but the vast majority of games do happen in single player. And then balancing towards multiplayer at the detriment of single player does seem to be a very odd move. And it seems to be, it's not great. It's actually bad for the majority of single player users. So that seems to be a bit odd. Now, ultimately, I think the truce time is a bit long. Maybe it should be, instead of going 5 to 15 from 5 years, it should maybe be 3 to 8 or 3 to 10. But I don't mind it being a bit longer, and I definitely don't mind it being variable. That's fine. 5 years every time is a bit weird. It's nice it scales with war score. I like that idea. One important other change, actually, that goes along with this is that the break truce when you tell someone to annul treaties in a peace is that they no longer do it for 5 years. It's now 10, which is absolutely brilliant, actually, because previously when you went to war with someone, you'd be like, right, I'm going to go to war, and I've taken you, and, you've got France as an ally. Oh, well, I don't need France to be your ally anymore. You'd do that, and it would last 5 years, but your truce would also last automatically 5 years. And as soon as you go to war on them again, that most of the time they'll have got that treaty back with France, because they've got the same relations and they're just waiting to be able to take the ally again. So it was basically a pointless move at the end of a war to go, please break your treaty, because they'll have just got it for the next war. However, now it's 10 years, it actually has a purpose. Now, the point of this was to be able to put it in between that 5 and 15 that they've changed the war score peace timer to. However, I actually really like it, because it means you can go to war, you can have a small war, and quickly go, right, okay, I've got, 15 war score, whatever, right, give me some ducats, break your treaty with France. And then in 5 years, or 6 years probably, with 15 war score, you can go, hi, yeah, we're going to war, and France won't be your ally, because they're still waiting another 4 years on top, because it'll be eventually 10 years for them to be able to get that treaty back. So I actually love that change. That's a brilliant change, because it used to be pointless, and I'd kind of just throw it in to fill deals. I wouldn't use it as something I'd actually genuinely want as the main topic of a deal. But now you can actually genuinely take that as the main thing in a deal, which I love. Brilliant. Good. I love that change. So, right, let's jump straight into the actual changes. First of all, let's talk about what's actually in the paid DLC. So, the couple of changes in the paid DLC, which is Res Publica, which is a new mechanic for Dutch republics, which balance the oranges versus the status. So that would be, I think it's the monarchy versus the government. So you've got that whole thing going on. Merchant republics now place trading posts, and you get a diplomatic action against elected monarchies to support heirs of your own dynasty in the realm. So you can try and be like, yes, you should elect my son to be your king, and that way I can get influence over you and stuff. And you get a couple of other things, such as new events for Dutch republics, merchant republics, elected monarchies, and dictatorships. Dictatorships are a special case in republics where republic tradition, so if you see right now I'm playing as Venice, if I have 100 republic tradition, you know, everything's standing, but if it falls too low in the base game, it would go to monarchy. Now in Res Publica, you turn into a dictatorship, which makes sense, because instead of crowning yourself king, you are effectively going, right, I'm a dictator, everything's mine, because you don't have a republic tradition to have any sort of government going on. Oop. So, let's jump into... Oh, there's also, by the way, one additional tradition. Now, this is one I absolutely love. National focus. Instead of having a +3 to each category, so you get a +3 for admin, a +3 for diplo, and a +3 for military tech as your base. So if we actually have a look at these, you can see up here it says base 3. You can now change it to 522 or 252 or 225. So if you're really short of something, you can actually put, you know, the extra 2 points into it at a cost of 1 point in the other ones. Which I love that idea. I mean, it balances out a lot more. So instead of having a spate of bad kings or queens or rulers or whatever, meaning your country kind of suffers, you actually have a way of balancing it. That's quite nice. Now, those are all in the paid expansion. So that's the mini expansion. I don't think it costs very much. I can't remember the price off the top of my head, but it's not a particularly pricey thing at all. Right, so in terms of the actual free changes, there are a couple of numbers of things. So I'm just skip through them really quick. Firstly, merchant republics no longer get +10 trade power. That's because they can now build trading posts. However, trading posts are part of the DLC, which is paid, and the reduction to trade power is part of the free game balance thing. So that's a bit odd, because that seems to be, at least it seems to me, that means that you'll be suffering if you don't have the DLC if you play a Merchant Republic, because you can't build your trade power back. You currently, you know, you lack the trade power bonus now. There are a couple of changes to how constitutional monarchies work and so on. Instead of getting a prestige decay bonus, they instead get -8 of years on nationalism, which is quite nice. And there's a couple of other things like enlightened despotism and so on. Merchant republics now have 3 different factions: aristocrats, traders, and guilds. Countries that have become dictatorships return to previous government when the dictator dies. And remove the legitimacy penalty for changing governments. Now, because you change governments, it costs you admin to do that. It seems to me like you're doing the admin transition in slowly and without any, you know, problems. However, it does seem a bit odd that you take a legitimacy penalty to it. Now, they've got rid of the legitimacy penalty because, you know, you spent the admin to go in, you know, properly and do all the paperwork. It makes sense to me. I love that change. Military. Remove manpower impact from production size will now be increased by 5% for each military tech. That is correct. I like that, because France, for instance, is a big nation with lots of high tax-based provinces, and I think tax base is somehow tied to production value or something. So they were getting ridiculously large militaries, manpower in the last few patches. However, now, because they've unhooked it from that and it's now tied to your military tech level, you now actually get more military power at high tech levels, which seems to make sense to me, instead of actually being, you know, related to production size, which could result in people like France getting ridiculous amounts of troops. Now, I was actually playing Venice offline a little while back. People have seen my tweets about it, and I also tweeted about a ridiculously powerful France. That is why France blobbed so much in that game, is because they changed it so that France was ridiculously powerful. Now, 1.7 patch will cut back on things like that, so France won't be quite so powerful. It applies to everyone, but France is a particular offender in this instance. The other important one is you can have a harder time diplo-vassalizing merchant republics, etc., blah, blah, blah. And you can now diplo-vassalize without a royal marriage. Really important, because playing anything other than a monarchy, you kind of lack the ability to take over anyone by vassalizing, at least not through war. And it becomes a case of, well, you've got to focus really hard on war as a merchant republic. Instead of being able to go, hey, Ferrera, hey, Mantua, do you want to be part of me? I've got all the money. And they might go, yeah, which you can do now, because you don't need the royal marriage. So if I, in fact, open up the dialogue with Mantua, and I go to, I can't go to royal marriage, where is it? It's influence? Of a vassalization, you can see that we no longer have the penalty for, or at least the requirement of, having a royal marriage. It's not there anymore. Which is awesome, because, you know, that makes sense. It allows you to play things that are not monarchies and actually have the full range of, or at least most of the range of options, whereas before you were cutting half, because you'd have war, and that's it. Whereas, you know, England can diplo-vassalize loads of things. Whereas, you know, if you're not a monarchy, you don't have that option, you only have war. Right, HRE. Imperial authority no longer gained when princes convert to the Emperor's religion, and Imperial authority is once again lost when princes convert away from the Emperor's religion. This one I actually don't like, because the HRE is often sort of riven by these religious differences, because some of them will turn to Protestantism, some of them will return to Reformed, and some of them will be Catholic. And the whole point is that the HRE is kind of marred by that. That's kind of the HRE's thing, that it's a lot of internal strife, and these religious differences help create that. And being the Emperor, you'd want to convert them to your cause. So, not being able to enforce the religion of the HRE, which of course is your own, seems a bit odd. I mean, you can do it, but you don't get Imperial authority for doing it, which is odd. But worse is the fact that it takes away Imperial authority for people converting away from you, which just seems like penalising you for people converting away, but giving you no incentive to convert them back. It seems a bit of an odd change. I don't understand that one quite. I don't like how they've changed it. I can't see the purpose behind it. Marketplaces and canals and custom houses have all been buffed slightly. That's because I think trade power had been worked slightly differently previously, and now they're trying to make the buildings in line with that because the buildings were a bit naff. Cultural conversion is now twice as long at default, but cultural conversion cost modifiers can reduce it. Cultural conversion is one of these things that you never really do. It's only very rarely that you'll want to convert a culture. I think I start with all cultures as Venice, yeah. Actually, no, I might. I have... yeah, then they're still vassals. No. But yeah, you never really convert the culture of anyone. And I don't see why they're increasing the length of time. I mean, it doesn't make it any more appealing. I think what they need to do is actually make it more appealing to actually make it a valid option, because currently it's only very rarely in specific cases that you'll want to convert the cultures. So I don't quite know where they're going with that one. Cap religious tolerance towards heretics and heathens at +3. That seems fine. Conversion zeal no longer disappears on conquest of province. That makes sense. Rebalanced and added decisions across religions to make sure they have similar chances of getting high missionary strength. Now, Catholicism had a fairly high missionary strength, and things like Sunnis did, but things like Protestantism never really could get really high missionary strength, or at least it seems to me. And now they've balanced it so that, all religions have a choice of, being able to convert people if they take the right decisions, I think is what they're going for, which makes perfect sense. Now, there's a few changes to rivals. Countries that are 50% apart in tech speed can no longer say each other as rivals. Makes sense to me. And countries that have chosen you as a rival can now always be available as a rival. Now, in my previous game as Venice, I blobbed a little bit. France had blobbed ridiculously. And, Austria had rivaled me, Denmark had rivaled me, and Hungary had rivaled me. I couldn't rival any of them. I had one rival and no other options. I just had one rival. And I had 2 slots left empty because I didn't have anyone to rival. And it was a case of, well, why can't I rival Austria? Now they've changed it, so if they've rivaled you, you can rival them, which is absolutely brilliant, because I like to be able to rival Austria. I like to be able to rival, Hungary if they're next to me. I mean, Denmark's far away, but, I could rival them because they've rivaled me. It makes perfect sense, that change, and I love that change. Colonization being bankrupt decreases settler growth by 200. Here we go. Countries now get plus 20% production efficiency of being ahead in time in the production technology. Countries get plus 20% efficiency of being ahead in the diplo technology. So previously, if we look at technology, you'd want to be ahead in military because it gives you so many advantages to be able to, conduct warfare and get, the leg up on your opponent. But you wouldn't really focus on these. There wouldn't be an incentive to be ahead of time in these. However, now you've got an incentive to be ahead of time in these because it gives you plus 20% production, plus 20% to trade, which is a lot. And that's brilliant. Being ahead in those now actually gives you a very large bonus, something that, actually makes it worthwhile, whereas previously you pretty much forget these and make sure this is ahead and pretty much go focus all down on military. Now you actually have an advantage of being ahead in all of them, which I completely love. They've changed a number of the ideas and policies and so on. However, they have added 3 new ideas. So if we look quickly at ideas, we now have the Humanist Ideas, which is stuff like religious unity, so plus 25% religious unity, -2 revolt risk, tolerance of heretics, less years of nationalism, accepted culture threshold, -50%, which is really good, better relations over time, and tolerance of heathens, and of course a bonus to negative a cost to idea cost. Now, this is basically the alternative to religious ideas. Religious ideas, you'd be like, right, well, I'm going to change religion, or I'm going to cover a large area. I need religious ideas because I need to be able to convert these people back to me. And often missionary strength just wasn't high enough. Humanist ideas is going the other way. It's a case of being able to go, no, it's fine. I don't care what religions I've got in my country. We're all cool. Which is brilliant. I absolutely love that. It's a way of being able to give you an option. Because previously, you'd have to go religious ideas if you're going to cover a large area of land. Otherwise, you'd have real trouble. Now you can actually just go, I don't care what religion you are, you can be part of my country. It's a brilliant alternative. I love it. Influence ideas. This is more to do with some stuff like, plus income from vassals, time to fabricate claims decreased, diplomatic cost is -1/4, aggressive expansion impact is -10%. Really useful. Diplomatic relations +5, envoy travel time decreased, imperial authority increased. This is sort of more to do with having, it's a bit like Diplo, instead of Diplo being, the big people, influence ideas is more sort of many small friends and so on. So subject force limit constraints +33, Diplo relations increase. So it's a great way of being able to control a lot of little friends or a lot of little vassals, and especially if you're part of the Holy Roman Empire, +10% imperial authority is brilliant. Now, they've added maritime, and then they switched the names on maritime and naval. So for those of you who can't remember what the previous naval was, basically maritime is all about having basically a better trade fleet, because you've got stuff like blockade efficiency, you've got, I believe, there's a light ship combat ability, you've got global repair time increase, force limit increase, ship cost down, maneuver increase for your admirals, and tradition. And ships can repair when in coastal sea zones. So basically, that's a great way of having a trade fleet. Whereas naval ideas is much more about doing damage with your fleet. So it increases the decreased maintenance modifier, heavy ship combat ability, morale, prestige. Basically, that's about war with navies, and this is more about controlling the sea with navies for purposes of trade and so on. So there's a nice distinction between the two, whereas previously there was one navy idea group. Now there is two that relate to naval warfare, and one of which is more diplo focused, one of which is now definitely a military idea. I really like that. It's a nice change. Other than that, there's a couple of changes, stuff like the AI and so on. They've also made it so you cannot sell a province to an AI who is a rival of you. Now, this one I don't actually like. Again, this is another change that I don't quite understand. So, as Brandenburg in my game, you'll have seen that I got hold of, or you may see that I get hold of a province over here, Marienburg. I don't know if you've seen that yet. Possibly. Marienburg. I get hold of Marienburg, and then Poland hates me forever. And the Poland's like, oh, you took this province. I'm like, oh. If I sell it back to you, will you like me? Now, this is a problem, because if Poland go, oh, I hate you, you took a province that I want to be mine, you should be able to go, oh, I'm sorry, Poland, I'm sorry, here's the province. And they should like you, because you gave them a free province. However, if they go, oh, I hate you, rivaled, you can't give them the province. You can't make any way to make reparations, and then they will just hate you forever. It seems a bit odd that they're basically forcing you into, you're going to be my rival forever. You can't get a way out of it. I mean, if they hate you for taking a province, and then you apologize and give them the province, or sell them the province at a really low price, I don't see why they'd not love you for that, honestly. It seems like a way that they're trying to force you to do that. It's a bit odd. Maybe it's to do with some sort of exploit with rivals, but I don't know what it is, but I'm not sure about that change. I'm not a fan of it. Interface. There's one lovely interface thing. Previously, if you're trying to select ships, oh, I selected infantry. Oh, I selected infantry. You'd have to go in and you'd click on the ship. And you'd click on the ship. However, now you can go Control, Bounding Box, and you've got the ships. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I think this was a feature in Crusader Kings, or maybe it was the alt key in Crusader Kings. I absolutely adore it in this game. It was needed, and it has finally been added, and it's brilliant. One other small interface thing they've changed. If anyone's ever played as Venice, being in the Alps is a massive pain, because you'd never be able to select the provinces when you've got people on them. So I'd have people in my provinces, and I'd be like, I'm trying to click on Verona, I'm trying to click on Verona, I'm trying to click on Verona, and you couldn't, because it would always select the people. Because they changed the bounding box to be ridiculously sized, or it was already. So the bounding box was ridiculously sized. Now, however, infantry, province, infantry, province. Brilliant. That works. If you've ever been like Venice in the Alps or whatever, you will fully understand how incredibly frustrating it is not to be able to select your province because the bounding box of the unit was so large. That I really appreciate. That's a lovely change. Other than that, there are a few new changes to do with getting rid of exploits and small bugs, and there's 5 new achievements. Honestly, that's most of it. I will put a link below to the actual full changelog, so that if you want to view all the changes you can. Ultimately, it's a fairly nice update. I quite like the update. There are a couple of things that are a bit weird in it. Paradox is, of course, known for doing pretty swinging updates where they change the balance pretty heavily. If anyone remembers the aggressive expansion update, they will fully understand what I mean by that. And I'm often a bit scratching head about how they suddenly swing these in one direction or the other. However, ultimately, they do generally turn out to be good expansions. So ultimately, I like quite a lot of the changes they've done. And the DLC does seem to be, somewhat fun, although I quite don't understand how they've got trading posts as part of the DLC, but you can play as a merchant republic otherwise, because it seems like they've lost their ability to actually be useful without the trading post, because the trading post is what gives them that trade bonus that they need. So, ultimately, that is 1.7 patch for Europa Universalis 4 and Res Publica. I've been EnterElysium, and as always, stay shiny.